Hi, guys. This week on Step by Step, I want to take a step back for a second and talk about something that Half a Mo 2422 brought up on the YouTube channel in one of the questions. I encourage you to go and check it out. So, one of the things that they asked about was why so many people don't get past the first few chapters. And I totally get that because when I first started writing, I wrote 10 books in 8 years before I sold my first one, and at least a dozen proposals where I couldn't get past the first three chapters. I had to kind of realize what was going wrong. And I didn't like right away. I sold the first three, four books, and then I sold another one that was a women's fiction, which is a little bit deeper, richer book. And I had just written like a what if situation about this Harvey the Wonder dog that was a dog that could do a lot of tricks that was dropped off on this woman's doorstep right after she returned from the funeral for her husband, where she realized he had another wife on the side. And I realized that the key to figuring out where to go next was to ask myself, who would be in this situation and why? You don't want to have a heroine who is too stupid to live and doesn't realize that her husband has another wife on the side and has been traveling the country with Harvey the Wonder Dog. So I wanted to look at what would make Penny, the character in The Other Wife, be in that situation and why, and how will that impact her growth? And so that is the key question that I ask myself every time I do a book. I've done other genres, like this is young adult horror that I wrote with my daughter. This is a zombie Romeo and Juliet kind of book. And I didn't want it to just be your typical book. I had to ask myself, why are these zombies in this situation? Why is the main character in this situation? And how does this impact them going forward? It's all about kind of knowing who your character is in their history. And I'll show you from my notebook, like that one of the things that I do is I take a bunch of notes as I'm thinking about them. This is for a different book that I'm working on. But I have all these little circled questions for myself about why this, why that. I ask why a lot when I'm developing characters. Why are they here? Why did they leave that situation? Why are they working this job? Why? The more times I can ask the why, the more I learn about the character. So, what do you do with that, right? You know why your character is doing what they do. You take that why and you look at what was the impact on the character. So, let's say that they're divorced. Why did she get divorced? Well, because her husband cheated on her. Why did her husband cheat on her? Because they were not emotionally connected. Why were they not emotionally connected? Because she's the kind of person that always keeps her cards close to her chest, not necessarily blaming her, just saying that that was one of the factors that was in that relationship. What is the impact on the character of being somebody that keeps their cards close to their chest? That is a great place to start. You do all that in your character development stages. Then, when you get to the plot, you look at why they make the decisions that they do and what is the impact on this character. That helps you start developing that internal storyline. And even if you don't really know it yet, which I don't, and I'll show you that in my pages in a few seconds, that helps you understand where you're going to go next. That gives me a framework. I know sort of kind of who this person is, why they're doing what they're doing, and I can see the impact of their decisions. And when you know the impact of their decisions, that helps you understand how they're going to handle different situations. Life is all about actions and reactions, and those reactions cause ripple effects throughout our lives. It also happens with our character, a character that blows up, or a character that retreats, or a character that doesn't address the difficult issues. That has an impact on their entire life. My husband and I have been watching Kodachrome on Netflix. I think it's a Jason Sudeikis and Ed Harris movie. And you can see the impact on Jason Sudeikis of decades of his relationship with his father and how that has made him react, how it has infected his relationships, and how it affects how he deals with his father. And when he deals with his father in a really negative, explosive way, that has a ripple effect. It both drives them away and also forces his father to confront his own inner issues. So these are kinds of things that you want to kind of maybe tape up above your computer. Why? What was the impact? And what's the impact on the plot as you're moving forward? And it helps you bring that internal plot to life, because the internal is what starts moving that engine, and the internal plot is what connects with the reader, because the internal plot is all about the emotions inside that character. And we want to connect on an emotional level. So let me just show you a couple of examples in the chapter one that we're still working on in Step by Step. Okay, so let's talk about this in action. and in the book that we've been talking about every week. If you missed any of the previous step-by-step videos, feel free to go back and look at the playlist, because I talked about the book from beginning to where we are right now and talked about literally every step of the process as I've been going along. Why I edited this, why I took this out, why I revised this, and how I started plotting the book. Now, the plot right now is still a little bit loose because I'm only on chapter 1, and I kind of like to get the characters underneath me a little bit and get to know them before I start really deeply plotting the book. To me, it's sort of like meeting new neighbors. I really want to know them before I start trying to nose around and figure out who they really are, right? So some of this you saw last week, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more in terms of the internal journey in the book. So when I add these little nuggets, like if my father were present enough to care, that kind of hints at some kind of underlying issue with her father. I don't quite know what that is yet, but as I write and as I start to plot going forward, I will figure that out. This relationship with her father will have an impact on her. It will have an impact on, think about it, her, the way she trusts other men, the way she builds family, the way she relies on other people or doesn't. So when you sit down, you look at a line like this, and maybe you've just written it and you're like, this is fantastic, but what do I do with it? Look at how that impacts all the other things in her life. How does that have a ripple effect on other things in her life? And keep those things, like I said, jotted down near you as you're writing, because it will help you make the character reactions true to the character. And when the character reacts in the way that is true to them, it can send the plot in new directions. Somebody who refuses to rely on others will react differently to a situation than somebody who always asks for help, right? So that will change the way your plot goes, and it will make the plot be true to the character itself. So, and remember, I said that I was going to change this section right here, and I did. I added something else about why she didn't have kids, but I still don't know why. Those were thoughts I kept stuck in the closet with dusty Christmas decorations and stack of board games that hadn't seen the light of day in a dozen years. What's implicit in there? That the family has not been doing any of these things, or Christmas, or board games for quite a while. What impact does that have on the character? Again, it erodes at her sense of family, her foundation, and kind of tells me that she is somebody that is searching for family at the same time that she's pushing it away. So that will also impact what happens in the plot. And I did share last week the I'm not drinking today. That alcoholism is going to be a thread throughout the whole book. It's her coping mechanism. And when you choose a unhealthy coping mechanism, you're not dealing with the problem at hand, you're avoiding it. And what happens? That all eventually comes to a head where you have to deal with it. So that's the impact of that choice of hers. How will that impact the plot? She's going to not deal with a whole bunch of stuff until she actually has to. And that will be part of the climax, the black moment in the book, which we'll get to down the road. Then I added some new content, and this isn't final by any stretch, but it sort of lets me start talking about her in my head. She has a need for family, which is what I just talked about. Someone who remembered her missing sister and her mom, who knew what it was like to go through life day after day, dragging around a wagon full of unanswered questions. So this is telling you that there's a heavy load inside this character. And that heavy load is, again, going to have an impact on everything that she does and every thought that she has. She tells herself that maybe it's better this way, because what does she do? She avoids what's going on. She avoids thinking about it. She avoids all of it, which is also something that her father is doing, because he has his stuck in 2002 mind. Remember from last week, her father has some mental health issues. So all of that internal is woven in with the external. The external is all of the physical, tangible things that are happening, and the internal is all of the emotional things. When you weave those two together, you get a plot that sort of generates itself, because you're always, again, asking yourself, what's the impact? How is this particular character at this particular moment in their life going to react to this? And what ripple effect will that have? So keep that in mind as you're writing. What happened? Why did it happen? And what was the impact? And tell me how that affects your scenes. Tell me how that helps you keep going forward. Next week, we're going to talk about hooks and ending a chapter to get the reader to move into the next chapter. So keep coming back. And again, follow the playlist on YouTube, and you'll be notified every time a video drops on Fridays for step by step.